Ana. 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 Ana.
¿Se escucha? ¿Se escucha? Qué bueno. Muy buenas tardes. Muchísimas gracias por acompañarnos. A nombre de la Cátedra Alfonso Reyes del Tecnológico de Monterrey, es un placer tenerles aquí. Vamos a cerrar la puerta para tener un mejor audio. Saludamos a quienes están siguiendo esta transmisión.
Estoy escuchando como ambiente.
Esta va a ser una conversación en inglés, y en unos días más podremos tener la versión con la traducción simultánea que estamos grabando en este momento. Es para nosotros un placer volver a tener en el contexto de la Cátedra Alfonso Reyes. Tuvimos hace unos meses a la filósofa GIULIA SISSA hablando sobre este libro verdaderamente revelador, profundo, interesante, sobre la construcción del cuerpo del poder y del cuerpo femenino. GIULIA SISSA es doctora en estudios clásicos por la Escuela de Altos Estudios en Ciencias Sociales de París. Ha centrado su investigación en los aspectos de la antigüedad clásica que tienen una estrecha vinculación con debates cruciales de la contemporaneidad, como el feminismo, la sexualidad y el cuerpo, las emociones políticas, las adicciones y el pensamiento utópico. Ha publicado ensayos como Eros tirano, Sexualidad y sensualidad en el mundo antiguo. En el marco de los estudios de género, también ha escrito obras como El cuerpo virginal, La virginidad femenina en la Grecia antigua y El alma tiene cuerpo de mujer. Se ha traducido al castellano varias de sus obras, entre ellas La vida cotidiana de los dioses griegos y El placer y el mal de la filosofía de la droga. La traducción al español de El poder de las mujeres es una publicación de la Universidad Veracruzana que hoy estamos presentando, cuyos ejemplares podrán ustedes encontrar aquí afuera de esta sala. GIULIA, como les decía, nos acompañó en el mes de mayo aquí en esta cátedra y es un gran placer coincidir nuevamente con ella el día de hoy. Bienvenida, GIULIA. Y para acompañarla en esta conversación hemos solicitado a nuestra muy querida colega Paloma Vargas esté presente con nosotros. Paloma Vargas es profesora investigadora del Tecnológico de Monterrey, es doctora en Historia también por la Escuela de Altos Estudios y Ciencias Sociales de París y doctora en Literatura Hispánica por la Universidad de Navarra en España. Ella ha sido directora de la Maestría en Estudios Humanísticos y directora también de la licenciatura en Letras Hispánicas del Tecnológico de Monterrey. Muchísimas gracias, Paloma. Te cedo la palabra.
Well, thank you very much. We are going to conduct this session in English. And for me, it's a great honor to be here, to be with you, Julia. I'm going to read a text that I prepared about my reading experience of the book that we have now in Spanish, thanks to the Universidad Veracruzana. And then Julia is going to read a text about different topics. And then we are going to return to a dynamic of themes or main subjects that we find in the book. And then if we have time, maybe we can open the mic to the audience. So I'm going to start reading. Le Pouvoir des Femmes is a revealing book. In my reading experience, As as in my personal library, this book belongs to a group of sources that have produced in me a certain type of personal insight through the comprehension of a cultural historical process. Together with Helen Fisher's Anatomy of Love, Stephanie Kuhn's Marriage, a History, and Silvia Federici's Caliban and the Witch, Le Pouvoir des Femmes by Giulia Sissa is a book that has provoked a cognitive process, a kind of trance, in which, as a reader, I can connect the history of ideas not only with the contemporary world, but with the personal, corporeal, and existential experience of being a woman. Published by Odile Jacob Publishing House in 2021 and written in an erudite prose with moments of lyricism, Le Pouvoir des Femmes can be read in Spanish, El Poder de las Mujeres, thanks to the Universidad Veracruzana and the splendid translation work of Cintia Lerma Hernandez. Why today, when a president or prime minister comes to power, the question arises, is a woman capable of governing? It haunts our minds like a ghost, like an old song in the background of the movie of our lives. The author responds through 6 chapters in which she masterfully brings together classical, medieval, and illustrated sources to give us an interpretation of how ideas about women have developed in the West. Democracy as a political culture based on the notion of the warrior citizen and the value of Andrea as a virtue in Athens of the 6th century BC. Aristotelian thought that defines woman as a creature, albeit intelligent, cold, porous, moist, full of moles, and without authority in her deliberative faculty. The contrast that we find in classical theory with the great tragic heroines, wise mothers, pre-Socratic philosopher, Thomas Aquinas' adaptation of Aristotelian ideas turns feminine, more or less la moles, into a constant fluctuation of passions that nullify women's ability to reason. Jurists convert the inferiority of and submission of women into natural law. Rousseau and the Encyclopedia that prolonged the denial of women receiving education, an enlightened spirit germ of the feminist movement in the thought and work of François Poulain de la Barre and the Marquise de Condorcet, are the main ideas, are a journey of ideas that Giulia gives us through the book. A profound, sometimes overwhelming journey of ideas which make us understand where we are now and why. A journey that compels us to keep moving forward towards the deep comprehension of how the idea of being a woman and the experience of being a woman are deeply related with our civil rights. So, now that I have the privilege to share this time and space with the author of this amazing book, I would like to address some topics, some of them in the form of questions, to let Giulia Sissa share with us today the main ideas of her work.
Many thanks to all of you. Is it okay? Thank you. Well, I don't know how to thank you, Paloma, for these welcoming words and for your thoughts as a reader and a colleague. But I would like also to thank the Feria Internacional del Libro, la Presidenta Carmen Junco, and the Director Enoch de Santiago, the Tecnológico de Monterrey, David Garza, Director and Executive President, and Anna Laura Santa Maria, Direttora del Dipartimento di Assuntos Culturale and Tecnologico di Monterrey. Did I get it right? More or less, sorry. but also the French embassy to Mexico, the consul Guillaume Pierre and José Manuel Blanco, chargé de mission pour les affaires culturelles. Well, I've been invited here not once, but twice precisely under the auspices of the Technological and of the French embassy. It is an honor. I'm really deeply, deeply flattered and truly humbled by your attention, the attention of all of you who have contributed, and also all of you who are simply here, notwithstanding this conflict of authoritative voices, ... If it's okay, I would like to start our conversation today by acknowledging the Nobel Peace Prize awarded to Narges Mohammadi, a woman, as we know, and an activist jailed and sentenced to more than 30 years in Iran. The prize recognizes her fight against the oppression of women in Iran and the fight for human rights and freedom for all in the world. As always, feminism is for all. It is a gift. It is a gift to humankind for the benefit of all genders in the plural, including cisgender men. Woman, life, freedom, we are all together planetarily and globally. I would like also to mention what I have learned about Mexico, about women in Mexico, very, very briefly. I was born in Italy, I have studied in France, I now teach in the United States. I went, as Hegel would say, normally from east to west, and I'm here with you. So I've learned very simple facts, such as the fact that women were given the vote in 1947, exactly as it was the case in Italy, 46, with the Republic after the end of the monarchy and of fascism. And the women were allowed to stand for office in 1953. In 2023, I've learned Mexico scored 0.49 in the area of political empowerment, which shows a gender gap of approximately 51%. In other words, women are 50% less likely than men to have equal opportunities in political participation. And today, women are only 23% less likely than men to have equal opportunity in political participation. And looking at the line of the car is really, exhilarating, because the line goes up almost vertically. So things are changing, and I would like precisely to start our conversation with this sense of, on the one hand, tradition, repetition, transmission precisely on the one hand, and I want to keep that one hand right here, and on the other hand, change, transformation, improvement, betterment, legislative activity that changes the rights of women, rights which I would define as protected faculty protected by the law. So this is really why I love history, cultural history, history of ideas, but also history of interpretation, history of institutions, history of social practices, which takes me Paloma, to preface very briefly my replies to you by saying that the purpose of the book of Le Pouvoir des Femmes, I was born in French, is to think historically the becoming, fundamentally, the becoming of gender roles, of gender expressions, of gender identities, and it is also to study both the persistence, once again, and the transformation of differences over time. So historically, for me, means to focus on specific context, not just world history, but very located moments in history in all sorts of places. And in this particular case, the case for this book, the long history of Greek-Roman and Christian normative ideas, so ideas that are precepts. You have to do this, you must do this. Normative ideas about women's inferior capacities and men allegedly superior abilities. So these are normative ideas because on the basis of this diagnosis of capacities or incapacities, the law, doctors, mentality, priest, philosopher will tell you what to do and what not to do. So capacity for what? Again, capacity to do mostly and more than anything else, such things as competing, fighting, winning, being in command, ruling, governing, and wanting to do so, and learning to do so as men do, and being good at it. So to think historically means to think also critically. I really endorse completely the project of critical thinking. Neither to blame the past, not to praise it, rather critically to think about the past. That's the point. So this requires that we go into details about argumentations and trains of thought, what we call stereotypes, positive stereotypes, negative stereotypes, but to go into the development of the reasons why these stereotypes are reconfirmed and considered to be right or wrong. So these stereotypes, let's use this language. Let's use this language which is familiar to us. These ideas about what women can do or cannot do, well, these are not ideas for academics. These ideas have impacted the lives of millions of people in the entire world. So I'm not interested in Aristotle for the sake of Aristotle. I'm not an antiquarian. I want to demonstrate how ideas formulated, say, in the 4th century BC can still be around, say, at the end of the 19th century, or perhaps in our ordinary mentality. Doctor such as Cesare Lombroso and Paolo Mantegazza, very, very respected doctors at the end of the 19th century, were able to write these things. Let me take the pleasure of sharing with you these sentences. Love, writes Georges Sand, is a slavery, a voluntary slavery to which woman aspires by nature. These are the instincts of dependence and subjugation and subjection that are similar in women to those that are acquired by inferior beings in contact with superior being. Take the dog. The dog, when is wild, is very belligerent and independent, As soon as a master comes along, the dog becomes docile and submissive. This is how women works. This is a doctor. This is not a philosopher, a poet, someone who is out of touch with the world. This is someone who tells women and men how to live, how to deal with their body, how to conduct their marriage, how to be in the world as gendered beings. Oh, in the same style, Paolo Mantegazza, same period. Maternity is the first and essential mission of women. And a woman, in order to perform her unique and essential mission, needs to love. Or love is all about precisely submission and suggestion. So the male looks for pleasure, for sensual sexual pleasure in the sexual act. Women look for love, and this love is a way of kneeling. At some point, Mantegazza alludes to the great Italian poet, medieval poet, very well, expert on Aristotle. I mean Dante. And he says there is a visual representation of Dante that shows a man kneeling in front of a woman. That's wrong. Women kneel in front of men because she is interested in one thing, woman, to admire, to thank, and to adore. Now, I want really for us to take in these words. I try to be polite when I read this kind of text. I repeat, the man is there for a woman in order to be admired, thanked, and adored. If a man kneels in front of a woman, it is only for sex. It is only for sex. Now, I have placed on the cover of the book a very felicitous and very old representation of Hercules, which is the super macho, the hyper male, the hyper man who spends time with a queen on Fale and becomes the one who kneels in front of her. So I have wanted to bring this way of thinking into focus in the book. I have wanted really to emphasize authoritative knowledge, the knowledge that makes people do things. Once again, doctors, lawyers, judges, attorneys, priests, these people who have an incredibly epistemic power and also the power of really guiding your entire existence. And have especially focused on Christianity. In the book, Christianity is brought really into focus, and more precisely, the Catholic doctrine is brought into focus, and more precisely, a certain kind of Catholic fundamentalism, which is extremely important and influential, both in Rome, when we read the innumerable interventions of the popes since the 70s, and in the United States of America. There is a real counter-reformation that is occurring in the United States, thanks to a number of legal scholars, of Jewish naturalists, theorists of the natural law. And these people tell us we must go back to Thomas Aquinas. That's the reference point. We must go back to Aristotle. So when we go into these intricate details of Aristotle's thought and its reception in the Middle Ages, we are just, reconstructing what we could call the archaeology or the genealogy of ideas that have been with us in Christian societies and that are very strong today too, because according to natural law, gender is bad. You have to go back to the notion of natural sex. All the discourse on parity is bad. You have to go back to the distinctiveness of the sexes and the complementarity of the sexes. That means that you shouldn't try to fight for rights. Stay in your place and do what you're supposed to do. So complementarity is perfectly comfortable with disparity, and complementarity is, in a sense, repackaged to us as a way of saving the difference between femininity and masculinity, and in the same kind of theoretical, very, very prescriptive project, we have the idea that there is only one sexuality, the sexuality between two opposite sex, the female, the male. There are two genders. We don't call them genders, they say. There are two sexes, the female, the male, unique, acceptable sexuality, heterosexuality in the marriage for the sake of procreation. Therefore, the same movement of counter-reformation goes again the discourse on power, dynamic of powers, and gender configuration that we find in history, where men are always considered, almost or almost always considered better, and therefore they have to govern, they have to rule, they have to make decisions. Well, the same line of thought goes in that direction, doesn't want to get rid really of that kind of power dynamic, and doesn't want to hear about egalitarian marriage. So we see today, if we needed the confirmation that feminism and gay rights absolutely go hands in hands. And as I said at the beginning, feminism, in a sense, has opened the way to all these discourses on reproductive rights, conjugal rights, and human rights in general, human rights against natural law. Thank you. I hope I didn't take too much of your time. Could you hear me? I have usually a very soft voice. Here I'm trying to.
If it's okay for you, maybe we can go with the themes or questions. Yeah. Perfect. Okay, that's great. Okay, well, I would like to address first, like in contrast to the Aristotelian ideas, I'm going to the ancient Greece, including what he points out in the Poetics about the need for female characters to reproduce the soft nature of women. Against this, or in contrast of, we found these women in Greek tragedy, right? These amazing women like Antigone, Jocasta, Aetra. In ancient times, that makes me that brings to me two different questions. On one hand, the relationship between the power of women, the possibility of power among women in the monarchy, and in a monarchy in ancient times, and the social function of theater among the Greeks, because it's a need to hear these voices, even though are in tragedy, right?
Thank you so much, Paloma. This is a very important question that concerns not just fiction, but I would say the way a complex cultures functions. So let's go straight to the time frame and to the place. We are in Athens between, say, the 5th and the 4th century before the Christian era. And the form of government is a democracy, meaning it is the self-government of men who are soldiers and citizens and who are very proud of their liberty and their equality. We have even theories of the process of democratizations as if the men who wanted democracy and wanted to change monarchy from the past were the soldiers, the infantrymen, because they didn't want to be always submitted to the same elite, to the same rulers. So women are out. They are absolutely out, and you have all these discourses that tell you that women cannot make decisions. Women cannot stick to their decisions. Women are not courageous. And the word courage in Greek is andreia, that goes with aner, and aner means the male man. Anthropos is the human being in general. Aner is the male man. Now, andreia is actually manliness. It is virility. So you see that already, if your mind goes to courage as a virility attitude, which is a virtue, which is incredibly valorized, you are already thinking a very biased way. It's going to be difficult for you to admit that women might be courageous and formidable, because Andrea is to be a man. So this is the reality, the social reality. This is the practice of democracy. All these men get together all the time, make dozens of decisions non-stop, and women stay at home. But then you have the theater. And the interesting thing is that the same men who live with those mothers and sisters and wives and daughters who are completely excluded from any form of participation in the deliberative process of governing the city on behalf of all of us, well, they are excluded, and therefore there is no all of us. There are only the men. Now, these men go to the theater and enjoy, because they give prizes, because they applaud, because they go and reproduce them again, enjoy plays in which women are gigantic, in which women are in the position of ruling, of making decisions, and of, in a sense, educating young men to become real men. So sometimes women, mothers in particular in Euripides, can try to calm down two young men who are too full of ardor and they hate each other. Calm down. There is equality. It's a beautiful thing. Look at each other. You are brothers. You are equal. Take turns in sharing power. The two young men don't want to hear this lesson. And what do? They kill each other. Their ardor in Greek, this very important word in Greek, ancient Greek, thumos, is the fire, in a sense, the internal fire. It has a lot to do with a physical conception of the body. Males are hotter, warmer than women. Women are more liquid, colder, and softer. So on the stage, it's a different world. On the stage, women can be courageous, can be formidable, can make decisions, can even make decisions on behalf of incompetent males, and think of Antigone, the great anti-tyrannical figure. Women theorize the reasons why equality is good and tyranny is bad. They theorize, once again, the concept of rotation. So women are not just big character. They think and they tell you what actually equality is all about. It's about rotation, it's about reciprocity, it's about calming down. And so the question is why? How could the Greeks like these plays? My answer to this question is that these women on stage belong to the past. They were princesses and queens from the Homeric tradition. They weren't threatening. The same man who goes to his wife and treats his wife as someone who is practically impotent and incompetent enjoys the prowess of Antigone, because Antigone is not threatening for his own family life. And even more paradoxically, and I share what I consider as a very interesting paradox, I share it with us. Well, it is as if women had taught democracy to men in the past. So women, these paradoxically aristocratic female figures, they have come up with all these values. They have invented democracy. So the man who watches Antigone knows that his wife, who very probably was not sitting in the audience, we don't even know if women could sit in the audience. I mean, he's not afraid that his wife could learn how to be an Antigone, but he likes Antigone because he doesn't want tyranny. He has been imbued in the democratic political culture of Athens with ideas against tyranny and in support of equality, rotation, reciprocal respect. So I think that something really special happens in that city, in that culture. And you are absolutely right when you open your question with Aristotle, because Aristotle, who is the champion of all the ideas that go for women's inability, women's incapacity, women's softness, women's cold, women's lack of courage, lack of virtues. There is a sort of, really, really low, I always say, not crystal ceiling or glass ceilings, but marble ceilings. Women know what they cannot, must not do, and they know that they have to stop. So Aristotle looks around in his society and rationalizes everything that he says. He gives us the most powerfully, once again, normative, prescriptive theory of all these do's and don'ts, do's and don'ts. And when it comes to the poetic, as you know, Aristotle writes the first, the really super important text of a theory of aesthetics, a theory of fiction, and in particular a theory of tragedy. He says characters have to be appropriate, have to be in tune, in harmony, have to be likely. So characters have to be coherent with what you think about the character, say, of women, or the characters of a slave, or the character of an adult man, or the character of a boy. And therefore, he says, it's wrong to create characters of women courageous, endowed with Andrea, and formidable. Here, the word is deinos, which means you really are formidable. So we are left with a question, which is, how could Aristotle pull this off? Because every single tragedy by Aeschylus, by Sophocles, by Euripides, and the many, many playwrights whom unfortunately we don't know because their text has gone lost, they only create for the stage women that are like Antigone, that are formidable and courageous. So, counterfactual question. If Aeschylus or Sophocles or Euripides had really worked as a poet in tune with Aristotle, well, we wouldn't have a single tragedy. That's my reply to your question.
It's very interesting how you explain in the book the notion of complexion, right? Among all the sources, the classical sources. So you just explained to us like these tumos, no, in the very important, very related to this warrior citizen. Fundamental for the democracy as a cultural politics. But I would like to talk about that softness, that molicia, no, la molest, that is very interesting because it mutates very in time. Like with Thomas Aquinas, it becomes the sensuality very clearly, and also anger. That is a very different passion from the one that we saw in the Greek times. So and how do you think, like, to get to the moment right now, if la molest is still among our aesthetics, among our idea of being attractive or being a woman, it's still here?
Thank you, Paloma. Yes, I think then when we tell a woman you are so sensitive, when we tell a young boy you're a boy, don't cry, boys don't cry, when we tell women to be gentle and submissive and yes, sensual and place herself in a position of being desired, not to be too grabbing. When we tell women that they should not want to rule, want to acquire power, that they should cultivate their originality, their dignity, their complementary virtues. Yes, we are still recycling again, and again the same logic. The same logic. If we read these doctors at the end of the 19th century, all over Europe or even in the United States, and I'm sure that I want to expand in the tradition of all kind of medical milieus, you always come back to this natural inclination, natural predisposition, softness. So the idea is that women are materially soft, and that material softness becomes an attitude of character, a characteristic, as we say. It becomes part of what these people call complexion. So this combination of physical qualities and psychological qualities and moral qualities. We always come back to that softness. And this starts in Greece. And for Aristotle, softness, and thank you for bringing this to the fore, softness is fundamentally involved in when we have to make a decision. Why? Because to make a decision, you have to be tough. And Aristotle uses this very beautiful visual image. He says, you must have a Homeric king in your soul. The Homeric king takes into consideration many possibilities, many options, but at some point he says, this is what I'm going to do. And on the contrary, women have a deliberative faculty, which is impotent, which is weak, which is invalid, which is without authority, that very, very masculine authority. And therefore, perhaps we start, but we don't get to the point of being decisive. Now, the important thing is that Thomas Aquinas and other Aristotelians in the 13th century especially will say, that's not enough. Women are even worse than that, because thanks to their liquidity, to their humidity, to their softness, they are not even able to follow a line of thought, to follow a train of thought. You have to stick to it. But, you know, these medieval thinkers, Christian medieval thinkers, incredibly influential, say, women get continuously interrupted. A passion comes up. Love, a sexual passion, fear, anger. And so a woman is unable to keep going and going to the moment when she says, okay, I've considered many options, but I go for this one. And crucial importance, I think that I can do it. I trust myself as someone who can realize this, can achieve this. So between antiquity and Christian thought, you have a sort of exasperation of the polarity and the disparity between men and women. And women are indecisive. We knew that from Aristotle, but also irrational. And you would say, these are ideas. Oh, you talk about Thomas Aquinas. Thomas Aquinas is a triple doctor of the church today. Benedict XVI has told us so many times, back to Thomas Aquinas. All these Jews naturalists I was mentioning in the United States, back to Thomas Aquinas. They want us back there. And this is why genealogy is important, because you see really the resistance, the viscosity of certain ideas, but you also see moments in which we throw everything to the wind with Poulain de la Barre, with Condorcet, or with contemporary pieces of legislation that place women in the position of thinking and deciding and thinking. So this is my reply to your question.
Yeah. That's all. Yeah. Okay. Well, it has been a great pleasure. I really invite all of you to read the book. It's an amazing piece of work. Thank you, Giulia, for being with us here in Monterrey.